The basketball season has either just started or is about to begin for most of you watching this video. My pro season started 2.5 months ago, so I feel like I'm in a decent position to give you some advice on how to get off to a good start. Basically, in this video, I'm going to explain where I went wrong in my start so you can do things right. You all know there's nothing I love more than exposing my many faults to all of YouTube. While the start to my season wasn't completely catastrophic, there are a few things I wish I would have done differently, especially because I started with a new team this year. So, as usual, please learn from my mistakes and kick off your new season strong. First, let me know in the comments if you think you're going to be in the starting lineup or not this year and why. I think the best way to set the tone for your season is to not wait for your opportunity, but create your opportunity. Every coach you play for is going to have their own systems and ideas for how their team should play. But there are ways you can create the role you want for yourself from day one. And the best way to do this is to stop being a system player and just be the system.
I'm not a system player, I am a system.
I'm joking, most of you won't be in a James Harden type situation where the rest of your team will have to conform around your specific abilities. However, you need to aggressively and assertively bring your positive attributes to the table to prove your value and, more importantly, help your team win. In our first game this year, I did this. I was able to play my game within the parameters of our system. But then over the next handful of games, this changed. I started feeling like I wasn't adjusting to the new offense, and so in this discomfort, I went away from a lot of the things that I bring to the table that make me a valuable player. Instead of being assertive, I became complacent. Even if you are on a new team, if you get in the game, you need to realize your coach is putting you in for a reason. They believe you have it in you to help the team win. So if you're a shooter, in your first few games, be extra aggressive with your shot. If you're an isolation scorer, then go get buckets. This is what I mean by creating the role you want for yourself. A lot of you probably feel like your coach has total control over your role, but that isn't necessarily true. If you prove you can do more than your coach might realize, they will almost certainly shift their idea of you as a player. Now, if you really are struggling to find a rhythm offensively in those first few games, there are some things you can do. This is where I am most frustrated with my start over here in Belgium. I had 2 or 3 games in a row where I wasn't scoring or shooting well, but I also wasn't bringing value to the team in any other ways. Remember, basketball isn't just about scoring. There are countless other ways you can make an impact on winning. In my basketball career, I have been fortunate to be in situations where I played a lot of minutes. In college, I always played over 30 minutes a game, and the same was true last year in Finland. So it felt strange for me this year when in a couple of my bad shooting games, my coach played me less than 20 minutes. Now, naturally, I thought it was because I wasn't having the offensive impact that was expected of me. But this wasn't actually right. It was because I wasn't having any positive impact on the game at all. I was invisible out there. And I actually proved this is true. Once I started focusing on the other things I do really well, like getting rebounds and pushing the ball, getting deflections, destroying plays defensively, getting offensive tip outs, I started playing more minutes while I was still struggling with my shot. And funnily enough, once I stopped focusing on scoring, as you can probably guess, I started scoring more. The point is, at the beginning of the season, even if you aren't shooting well or aren't scoring like you want to be, there are other ways you can fight for minutes. And that is really what the situation probably is for a lot of you. A constant gladiatorial battle for minutes. That brings me to my next point. I'm sure a lot of you are going to be in a basketball situation that isn't exactly what you hope for. Maybe you aren't getting many minutes, or you feel like you don't fit into the offensive system, or you don't gel well with your teammates. We all know there are countless ways things can go wrong in a basketball season. I have some advice for you in these situations, but it's probably not what you want to hear. Like I continue to mention, I didn't get off to the best start. After about 6 or 7 games, I wasn't playing to my standard, whatever that might be. Unfortunately, my human brain took over and I found myself making a big mistake. I started making excuses, and I started blaming things outside of myself for my struggles. What you quickly realize is this doesn't help much at all. Sure, you can make yourself the victim, and maybe you really are the victim of your situation, but that isn't going to change things. The best thing you can do, and in my opinion, the only option, is to take responsibility. This is what I finally did, and over the last 4 games or so, I've been playing a lot lot better. I'll tell you exactly how I did this because maybe it can help some of you. I journal almost every day. It really helps me keep track of my thoughts in basketball, of course, but also just life in general. So I sat down and I wrote this journal entry where I basically said I'm done making excuses, I'm done blaming things that are outside of my control, and I'm done letting those things outside my control affect my actions and emotions. I wrote that for now on, I'm gonna make the most of the things that are in my control, like my mindset, my approach to every practice and game, the extra work I can put in. This is another important thing to remember at the start of a new season. We spend all off season working so hard at improving our game, or at least I hope you do. Then the season starts and bam, it's like, I should be this changed, new and improved player. And yes, hopefully you are a better player from last year, but just because the games have begun, you still have the opportunity to get better throughout the season. A lot of basketball teams don't do much player development during practice. For instance, my team over here in Belgium really focuses on team strategies during our practice time. Sure, you might get 30 to 40 shots up over the course of the hour to hour and a half of time that we spend on the court, but it's nothing compared to an individual skills workout. This is another thing I took for granted to start this season. I've struggled with my shot, and yet I wasn't consistent about getting extra shooting workouts in. I have always said that continuing to train your skills during the season is essential. This helps you stay in rhythm and even grow as a player as the season goes on. I was overlooking this. Another mistake. I really hope that you are keeping track of all the things I've gotten wrong so you can learn from them ahead of time. So far, I've talked about creating your opportunity, finding ways outside of scoring to prove your value, taking responsibility for your situation, and continuing to put in extra work as your season goes on. Now, here are a few other great ways to get off to a good start. Not every coach you play for is extremely approachable, but I don't think it can hurt to get out of your comfort zone and ask your coach to meet before the season. First off, you can get a better idea of how they see you as a player and what they think your role should be. This doesn't have to be the end-all be-all. As we talked about, your role can shift as the season goes on. But starting this dialogue with your coach early on can be really beneficial for you. It will allow you to have much better communication as the season progresses. I had an individual meeting with my coach before our season started about a whole bunch of things. It was like an hour-long meeting. But the most important thing it did was establish our relationship. I have felt comfortable approaching him about ideas or questions I might have during this first part of the season, and I think it's in large part due to that first meeting. A coach can seem like this big, scary person, but a lot of times one-on-one, you realize that they just want to help you succeed. This might feel uncomfortable at first, but you'll be glad you did it. Speaking of communication, having vocal leaders is essential on almost every successful team. You need players who are going to hold their teammates accountable and help run things during practice and games from the floor. Becoming a vocal basketball player is an incredibly valuable skill in general. Being a really quiet, shy player actually becomes less and less acceptable as you move up in levels. So if your goal is to play at the highest level possible, then building this skill early on will really benefit you. And of course, leadership can come from anywhere. Again, to look at my own situation, I felt like because I wasn't playing at a really high level, I didn't deserve to have a leadership role on this team. But this isn't really true. In college, I had a few teammates who played very little, but were incredibly important leaders for our program. The point is, anyone can be a leader, and great teams need leaders, so why not you? Establish this from the start, and your teammates will quickly begin to look up to you. And finally, routines can be really helpful for basketball players as the season gets into full swing. Last year, my team in Finland practiced at the same exact time every day, so I got into a really specific routine. I think I took for granted the part this played in my success as I started my new season in Belgium. Our practices here have been much more all over the place. Sometimes we'll be at the gym in the morning, sometimes the afternoon, sometimes both. But because of this, my sleep schedule, my eating routines, my non-basketball priorities were all over the place. Over the last few weeks, I've tried to get back into a more consistent rhythm with all of these things that are so important to any basketball player's life. This is just one more thing that I've taken back control over that has helped. Please don't take things like sleep, diet, and time management for granted. And start building these routines at the beginning of your season so that by the end, they're just habits. The good news for me is I feel like I am back playing at a high level over these past few weeks. The bad news is I feel like I could have done so much more in those first 2 months. I don't regret those mistakes I made because I see them as learning opportunities. And more importantly for all of you, I guess, teaching opportunities. Quickly, the Hacking Hoops community has officially launched, so check this video's description for more information on this exciting project. And if you want to learn more about what it takes to play at the next level, check out this video on how basketball recruiting actually works in 2024. I know you all have what it takes to get off to a good start, so let's make it happen. I appreciate all your support, and I will talk to you soon.